We're going to be in the Gospel of John today, the Gospel of John, and the Gospel of John, written by the Apostle John. John writes with such clarity and insight into the person of Jesus Christ. He understood that the humanity of Jesus is just as important as his deity. And he understood that very well, and it comes through. Who Jesus is and all that he is for us comes through his writing. We're going to be in the Gospel of John, the 2nd chapter. This is while Jesus and his disciples, they were attending a wedding feast in the Galilean town of Cana. And it is there at Cana that he performs at least the first recorded public miracle, that of turning ordinary water into wine. You see, wine was very important to the culture of that day. It was always involved in celebrations, times of rejoicing. But it was here at this celebration, at this wedding supper, that the wine runs out. But this is unbeknownst to the wedding guest. You see, it's discovered that the wine has run out. But the mother of Jesus, Mary, who was there in attendance as well, she becomes aware of this dilemma. And she goes to Jesus. And she asks Jesus to intervene in the situation. We're going to be in John 2, verse 1. John writes, "On the third day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. And Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, 'They have no more wine.'" Now at first, when she comes to Jesus, he seems a little bit reluctant to involve himself in the situation. Yet seemingly he responds to the faith of his mother's request. Because she knew that Jesus Christ was able to remedy any and all situations. Somehow, maybe instinctively, deep down, she knew that Jesus had the answer, whatever it is, whatever the circumstances. Whether it was something large or whether it was something small, Jesus had the answer to the situation. In verse 4, Jesus says, "Dear woman, why do you involve me? My time has not come." That is, that time when he would be the one who would be openly and publicly demonstrated to be the Messiah, the very one that Israel and all humanity has been seeking for. My time has not yet come. But his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, there at the wedding supper, there in that household, they had 6 stone ceremonial jars. Now, these jars could hold about 20 to 30 gallons of water, and they were used for the purification rituals. The purification rituals. It was very much a part of the ceremony and all those ritualism that was under the Old Covenant. And some of the things that the Jewish people, that is the Pharisees and the Sadducees, had developed on their own. Some of those additions and the add-ons, where they would wash before eating, they would wash after they were taking a walk, they would wash their hands, their feet. They were very careful to do these things. It became very important. In fact, they elevated their own rituals and additions and their own perceptions and sensibilities and even their very oral tradition to the level of scriptural injunction. In other words, they made that very important. It was important to them to fulfill those things and to carry them out. Now Jesus said to them, that is, those servants that Mary had encouraged to follow Jesus' instruction, Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water." And they filled them to the very brim. You see, the servants, they followed Jesus' instructions, and they did exactly what he told them to do. We read, "Then he told them," that is Jesus, "then he told them, 'Now draw out and take it to the master of the banquet.' And they did so. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. But he did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside, and he said, 'Everyone brings out the choice wine first, then the cheaper wine after the guests have become much drunk. but you have saved the best until now. So what Jesus Christ does here in this miracle, he takes these ceremonial pots that were used for ritualism and ceremony, has them filled with ordinary water, and it is miraculously transformed into wine. But not just any wine, but very good wine. You see, in the culture of the day, what they would do, they would use the good stuff at the beginning of festivities, and then as time went on, they would bring out the cheaper. But here Jesus Christ produces high-quality wine. You see, and it made a real difference. It impressed that master of ceremonies, that manager or the overseer of the banquet. It was good wine. It was good stuff. See, Jesus Christ transformed that water into wine through the power of his grace. You see, it no longer was water just to quench a temporary thirst, but it became wine to gladden their heart. You see, this is all highly symbolic. You see, the ritualism and the jars, the ceremony, those jars pictured the ceremonial religiosity of the day. Stone-cold jars that could only temporarily quench the thirst. But the wine that Jesus produced in it is symbolic of that new life, that new relationship that the stone-cold ceremonial, ritualistic religion of the day could not fulfill. You see, that's what Jesus Christ was doing. He was actually acting out what he himself has done for all humanity. You see, through Christ, we have the opportunity to move from stone-cold ceremonial, ritualistic religion into a vibrant, living relationship. You see, water only quenched their thirst, but wine could make glad their heart, could give them real joy. And that means that relationship with Jesus Christ is the only thing that can really and truly fulfill you and I. You see, all humanity is looking for Jesus. They just don't know it. And they're trying to quench that thirst, meet that need within them through every other means. It's like drinking the water in the ceremonial pot. It may temporarily assuage your thirst, but it's never going to make your heart glad. Only Jesus can do that. Wine as well was symbolic of the blessing and the joy of God. We can see that in Proverbs 3, verse 10. Where the writer of the proverb says, "So shall your barns be filled with plenty, and your presses shall burst out with new wine." So that abundant life that we can have in Christ, that supersedes and exceeds any expectation, it's surprisingly joyous. You see how the master of the ceremony, the feast, the master of the banquet was surprised. He says this is better than what ordinarily is served. That is, the life that we can have in Christ is better than anything that you and I could ever anticipate. It's greater, it's better, it's higher, it's more fulfilling, it's more joyous. It's something that exceeds the stone-cold ritualism as symbolized by those purification pots. You see, those purification pots that were used just to wash the hands, it was so much like the Pharisees. Jesus talking to them in Matthew 23, verse 25, he says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you make clean the outside of the cup and the platter, but within are full of extortions and excess." You see, in other words, ceremonial religion doesn't transform your heart, doesn't change you. You may look good, you may have the appearance of good, it may guide you morally and ethically, and you look good, but there's no real transformation of heart. You see, wine is made through a transformational process. It is made through a transformational process. It takes ordinary grape juice and it makes it something that it really wasn't before. You see, that's what Jesus did. That's what he did with the water, and that's what he has done for any one of us. He moves us beyond ceremonial religion.